So I'm here today with Dr. Elizabeth Moore, who's the current president of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists. I'm Sharon McGowan and I'm the CEO here at the College of Psychiatrists. Elizabeth, we're here today to celebrate and acknowledge World Mental Health Day. And the theme for World Mental Health Day this year is Mental Health is a Universal Right. So I suppose in a busy world where everything is rushing forward all the time, it's a good opportunity for us to pause and reflect on what that means to us. Mental health is a universal right. So it's acknowledging the importance of mental health and well-being for every individual. We often think about physical health being a fundamental right for everyone, but we don't sometimes think about mental health in the same context. So I thought we might start this discussion today with really talking about stigma. And why stigma is such an issue. So we know that many people, up to 50% of Australians who suffer a mental health condition, don't actually access services. And we do know that suicide continues to be a huge tragedy and a burden of disease across the world. So why is stigma such an issue around mental health?
It's a very good question, Sharon. And I guess there's several levels of stigma. There is this pervasive societal expectation that we should be able to manage. We should be able to do things because we are actually an individualistic society, both in Australia and New Zealand, whereas in some collective societies, there's much more of an ability to reach out and actually get help. There's also self-stigma around seeking help. You know, if I go and seek help, what will my parents say? What will the school say? What will my friends or enemies say?
So as a college, what are some of the particular things that you think we could be doing more of to really reduce the stigma that's associated particularly with mental illness as opposed to mental health?
Look, I think we've got a role in both. So I think we should be out there promoting good mental health and empowering people to actually look after themselves. Then I think in terms of mental illness and the stigma around mental illness, we need to add to the education campaigns that in fact 1 in 5 of us will experience this and 1 in 4 will experience something that is over their lifetime very significant. I think that there are opportunities for us in our training program to also look at how we can look at those particularly vulnerable groups. So we know that the rates of mental illness and psychological distress are much higher in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, in Māori, also in people who identify as LGBTIQ, as well as those that have an intellectual disability. So how can we make our offices, our practices, our processes much more friendly to those people? Then the last thing is advocacy to government.
So there's a bit to unpack there. So I suppose it's about affirming our commitment to creating, as you said, a society that values mental health as much as physical health, and that education is an ally in this space. And it is about breaking down those barriers and fostering sort of empathy across the community. So if a key part of it is education, I know that one of the areas that the college is actually focusing on at the moment is creating those sort of safe spaces and being culturally safe. So can you tell us a bit more about why being culturally safe is so important and what we are doing at the college?
So cultural safety is important for all of us. It's particularly defined within the Māori and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander space. So the understanding of the societal context, of the historical context, is really important, and the ways of working with people. In terms of cultural safety within the college, there is education around the basic tenets, CPD modules. There are 4 modules that we have around the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. In our Māori space, we have the Treaty of Waitangi, and so we have actually reinforced a position statement around that. We value that. We value the ways of working and collaborating with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Mental Health Committee, and also Te Konahira, which is our Māori Mental Health Committee.
So these are two binational committees that we have established to really help us to increase our awareness, to advise us on education, on our programs, and that's not just for our members, but for how we respond to the community and to the community's needs. So I think it's also important that we provide accessible mental health services. So geography tends to be another barrier to accessing mental health and making sure that it is a universal right and easily accessible. So again, I think the college is doing some really active work in that space around our rural health pathway. Can you tell us a bit more about the rural health pathway and why this is so important?
Yeah, it's something I think we should be particularly proud of. We know that there is a workforce shortage, and that's particularly in rural and remote areas. We also know that if you're a medical student and you train in a rural area, or if you are a subspecialty training in a rural area, you're more likely to stay. So having the rural pathway is a really good way of building up community and providing services there. But it's not the only way. So I think we need to reinforce the need for telehealth. The jury is out as to whether or not some people prefer face-to-face, some people prefer telehealth, but at least telehealth gives the option for people to access mental health care much more easily and affordably.
So thinking about that as a psychiatrist, what are some of the things that you do to maintain your own mental health and to build your resilience? Reflecting on your career, has that changed?
I think you have to have several levels. I think, incredibly lucky. I had a mentor, and I would recommend to all young psychiatrists and older psychiatrists to continue with a mentor. Those people that are mentored are much more likely to go into mentoring, and it is a wonderful connection. And we know that connectedness is one of those things that builds well-being. I think the other tips have always been, when you have had a holiday, plan your next holiday. And also have a peer support group that you can talk things through. Because we are people dealing with people, and both can be unpredictable. And it's really important to keep a check on yourself and on the people around you. Not so much to show that there may be something wrong, but to actually say, hey, this isn't like you. What's happening for you? And that might open up some of the floodgates. I think it's also important that people have a hobby outside of psychiatry. Be that sport, be that my guilty pleasure of watching musicals, whatever, because that helps you to have the ability to reflect.
One of the other things I think we're seeing much more of is this encouragement of connecting with nature. I know for myself that's one of the key things that I do to maintain my own mental health is to regularly walk, but to just get outside and make sure that I can see the ocean or the bay, in this case around Melbourne, or get out into a park. But you're right, it's horses for courses, so it's whatever makes you feel mentally well and building up that sort of resilience over time. So today we are committing to creating a world where mental health is not just a right, but a reality, where everyone can live their lives to the fullest. So to end it, I would say we end on there is no health without mental health.
I would agree.
Thank you so much for joining me, Elizabeth. It's been a great discussion.
Thanks, Sharon.